Jesse, when I think, and I don't know how you feel about this, but when I think about being a man, my vision of what a man was, I think the first word that pops into my head was a provider. That was the first, when I heard be a fucking man, I heard be a provider, make money. I don't feel like that anymore. Although making money and being a provider is an aspect of manhood. But the word that pops into my head now, this far down my journey with Jesus Christ, is servant.
Ooh, okay. Here's where I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that. And
Okay.
I'm going to tell you why. I ask every man who goes through my one-on-one program, define what is a man. And they do things like provider, someone who loves their family. We'll even throw in servant. We'll throw in someone who's not willing to give up. They'll throw in all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ask them this question. Can a woman be a provider? Can a woman be a servant? Can a woman unconditionally love her family? Can a woman lead a team? Can a woman do any of these things? Every man says yes. So then I go to, so then what is a man if we don't want them to be conflated? If there's a clear distinction outside of biology of what a man is. Now I think servant is a trait and expression of a man, right? It's that like warrior in the garden, how we're talking about like that warrior is probably serving that garden, which could be metaphorically a representation of his family or community because they're vulnerable, they're fragile,
Mm-hmm.
right? He has to serve them to make sure that they can be fruitful. I like that metaphor. But that is, again, an expression and a trait of a man. So
Okay.
then how do we define a man that we don't confuse it with a woman?
So I really love that direction. And I'm the thing as you were talking, what I was thinking of was aura. I think aura in line with being a servant is a definable characteristic of a man. A man and a woman can both be leaders, but the aura of a man is what defines a man that leads or a man that serves. So what I'm trying to say is when I think of like, all right, if I'm going to use the Bible as a reference, who are two guys that I think were the best examples of what a man is? I think of King David and I think of Jesus.
Mhm.
King David, Old Testament, Jesus, New Testament. Both of those two men had aura and they were servants. David served God. His entire lifespan was everything he did. I mean, you can't say everything because the Bathsheba incident isn't everything. I can't lump that in. But what I'm saying is,
When he
I
was
want
faithful to the Lord.
he was faithful to the
Unbelievable.
Lord. He always deferred to what God said. He did not take anything by brute force. He did everything in he appealed to the heart of God for most every decision that he made, right? He was not God, therefore I can't hold him to the standard of Jesus Christ. So he wasn't perfect, but my goodness, he served God in everything that he did. That's Old Testament. That's what I think of as a man. Then I go, Jesus is the best example of what a man is, and he did it. He served with aura, right? He was quietly confident. He was righteously indignant. He got mad without sinning, which is something
Mhm.
that none of us have the ability to do. So, but at the tip of the spear, though, I think those guys were servants. Jesus says it best that he came to lay his life down as a ransom for many. He came not to be served, but to serve. David had the same mindset. He didn't do anything because fuck it, I'm the king. God, hey, motherfucker, God anointed me as the king. Don't you forget that. It was, God, what should I do? I don't know what to do. Saul right now is the king. You anointed him. So how do I best serve Saul? How do I best serve you? So that's when I hear the question of like, what's a man? That's why my mind goes to servant, but asterisk with aura, right? The way you serve defines whether you're a man or a woman. That's my thought, right? Because a woman can be a servant, but she's a humble servant. She's a soft servant, right? My wife serves my kids softly. I serve my son and daughter probably with a different aura.
Mhm.
So that's like how that's why my mind, and listen, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and that's okay. But that's why my mind goes to, well, I think that a man the way to define a man is that first and foremost, he's a servant.
Mhm.
Figure out though, guys, what it is that you're gonna serve. Because if you're gonna serve yourself, then you're all fucking wrong,
Mhm. Yeah, and
right?
so when I hear aura, I also think that energy that you bring, the second that you walk into a room, a woman feels that she can fall into her feminine, right? Because of that aura that you're bringing. This
100%.
servant and how you talk about the servant for the benefit of that tribe, community, or family as well.
Hmm.
When you talk about King David, one of my favorite Psalms is 27, 1 through 3, where he talks about he's going to war, but he's like, who would I be afraid of? No one. I shall have no fear because my salvation is in the Lord. My enemies will come and they will stumble and fall. And he's like, that an army besiege me, and they are at the gates, and even then I will be confident.
Hmm.
And he
Hmm.
always brings it back to his identity in the Lord. When you talk about him and his aura, the dude was undefeated when he leaned into his identity in God and trusted God. Like the confidence that that guy had, especially as like a 13, 14, is the guest of when he was, how old he was when he fought Goliath, running at him and then picking up a couple rocks for his brothers, like, you know, but it's all for God's glory,
Yep.
all for God's, not his. And him telling people, no, 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 this was God's victory, not my victory.
And he knew, how amazing is it that, so like to me when I'm hearing us talk about David, I'm like, so you can't fake aura and you can't fake servanthood. David wholeheartedly trusted in who God was. There was no way that a 13, 14-year-old boy standing in the midst of the Israeli army, the warriors, who were all afraid to fight Goliath. He looked at Goliath and was like, "This is the guy that you need. I'll kill this motherfucker. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not gonna do it. God's gonna do it. Don't you understand the God that we are serving, who's fighting on our behalf?"
Mhm.
That aura was rooted in faith. And I was just reading in Hebrews today. I think it was Hebrews 6. Let me reference it real quick so I'm not all dicked up on this, but
Yeah.
it was all
I'm
on faith. Hebrews 10. Oh no, Hebrews 11. I was in Hebrews 11 this morning and it was just faith on faith on faith on faith on faith. If guys, if you're listening to this and you're going to want to go down the journey of being a man, you cannot fake aura and you can't fake servanthood. You cannot fake that. You
Mhm.
can fake a lot of shit in your life. I'm sure you have, and I'm sure you are. What you can't fake is having faith in God being exactly who he says he is, because that was what gave David the aura.
Mhm. Is that
And
unshakable belief?
unshakable belief. When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. How do you say that without being supremely confident in who is actually fighting on your behalf?
Yeah. Mhm.
Right? I think of like 2001 Miami Hurricanes, like arguably one of the best college football teams ever. If any one of those dudes were to get on an interview and talk shit about the team that they were going to play, they knew that the 2001 Miami Hurricanes was who was showing up.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't, you can say whatever you want. I'm going to whip that ass. All 58 of us are coming on the field, convicted felons. We're going to treat you like that. They had that aura because they had the faith of like, togetherness and who they were. And I don't mean convicted felons because of who they were. I mean like they had this attitude that they were nasty.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
They knew exactly who they were. David knows exactly who God is. That's why not only did he kill Goliath, but he cut his fucking head off. It was
Mhm.
like, this is as dead of a dead guy as you can be. I think you serve my God now.
And for context, these when he fought Goliath, those armies were at a standstill for 2 weeks because no one was willing to fight him. For 2 whole weeks. Okay, so the same kid who cuts off Goliath's head and serves it to King Saul on a platter also had an opportunity to kill King Saul and take his throne, but he chose to obey his Lord. He chose to obey Yahweh God and the fact that he was patiently waiting. And it was some astronomical amount of time, some like 20 years, we don't have an exact number that he had to wait. I don't know if
And
you
that,
know the number, but he had to wait like 2 decades or something.
I'm pretty sure it was 20 years. And what I hear too a lot when I read scripture is, and this is a side note to this, but like men, we want things to happen and change now. And there's very few times in scripture, if any, where God acts immediately. Abraham waited 10 years before that covenant was fulfilled to have that child. David waited 20 years. It's a waiting game. Are you patient enough to wait? And I think it all comes back down to faith, which is again something you cannot fake, which is at the core and the genesis of all these calls that we do, which is men, you have got to figure out who God is. Because once you do, then the art of being a servant leader will become clearer to you. You serve God. Same way Jesus showed up and had all the power in the world to do what he could have called legions of angels at any time.
Mhm.
All think of the disrespect that he endured throughout his time on earth. And at any point in time, he could have been like, you're done, all of you. How about that? You want to fuck around and find out? I'm the king of FAFO. We'll just do this right now. Never once, man. Never once. He just owned it all. So yeah, I think when we're discussing manhood, what's a man? That's why I shy away from protector, provider, because those are worldly attributes that the world gives to men.
That's what I was actually gonna bring up. For the context of what we're talking about, we are men of faith, deeply, deeply rooted.
Very.
So, yes, there is this secular view. There's a secular view on things, but I believe that men, and I'll go to my grave, I'll on this one, if you are not truly rooted in your faith and have a relationship with God, you are like a leaf tossed in the wind, right? You don't get to choose what grounds you. You're not building your foundation on a rock. It's on sand,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Like Jesus says in Matthew 7:24, do they put these things into practice? And if we don't put them into practice, you are going to build whatever you think defines you as a man is going to be built on sand.
Yep.
It just goes back to David and Jesus. Jesus obeyed the Father. He often retreated to him and was like, "Is this what you want me to do?" Okay. He even goes and was like, "Can we renegotiate this me being crucified tomorrow?"
Yep.
Just asking.
Yep.
And then came back and was like, "All right, got to go through with it."
Which should tell you, Jesse, and the guys that are watching this, that when you get to a place where you go, you are allowed, it is encouraged, I think, to go to God and say, hey God, I know you said this, but is there a way that can we rework this? Can I not do that? That takes even more faith, in my opinion, right? Because you're then appealing to God and saying that God can change the circumstance. If God said, yeah, what if God said, you know what, Jesus, yeah, we can do this differently. Wow, we're talking about a completely different story, but God willed it. God allowed that. Jesus didn't just do it on his own, right? So when you get to a place where you're deferring to God on everything, things are going to come up in your life where you go, wow, are you sure, God? Like, hey, God, Are you sure you said you wanted me to do this? If you've never had that conversation, you're not where you should or would wanna be with your faith. I
Yeah.
mean, I'll ask you, have you ever done that, Jesse? Have you ever gone to God and sat and been like, "Fuck, like, are you sure? Like, you're telling me that this is what I gotta do right now?" And then you hear nothing and you go, "Okay."
Oh, I have. I've been so pissed off in my own car yelling at him. Am I freaking right or wrong? Like, you need
Mhm.
to tell me. Freaking, I vividly remember being in my car, driving on people might know where I live. Pyramid and McCarran. It's this big intersection in where the area that I live, the city. Just like furious. But the thing is, when you go to him, and I go to him for everything though. Okay. I go to him for everything because of the relationship I have. I
Mhm.
don't just ask him to bail me out of a bad situation, which is what most men, the only time to revert to prayer.
100%.
Every good thing, I'm like, brother, that was you. And I thank you.
Uh-huh.
Right? Every little thing. This morning, I was asking him about me and my dog doing our morning walk in the dark, praying about, let's talk about all these things. What do I need to do on this? Should I be doing this? Like, please let me know about this. We are constantly building rapport because the only way you get to know someone, anyone, whether it's your wife, your best friend, your children, is building rapport. God's no different. He wants us to come to him. He calls us to come to him with everything, not even our anxieties, right? Put your anxieties on him. But I want such a deep relationship like King David. King
Mhm.
David and him, it's like they're writing poetry to each other because they have such
Yes.
an intimate relationship.
That's why I called the Psalms, like, they're David's love letters to God.
I think I've heard you say that. Yes.
They're love letters, man. They're and I tell dudes all the time too, I'm like, "Hey, hey, hey, slow down. You can be angry at God. Have you ever been angry at somebody that you don't know? Not
Me?
really."
No, I haven't. No, I think this part of being a man is you don't allow someone who you don't know to impact you and your emotions.
100%. Now, you know God, I know God. I ask him for something. I ask him to guide me through something. He gives me a direction. I do it, and it really fucking jacks me up, and I'm pissed because I'm like, "Well, you told me to do that. You told me to do that," right? Oftentimes, I'm angry because I only see to the end of my nose
Mhm.
effect of it, where God's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, but see beyond that because now, like, wait 10 years,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I told you to do this. You may not notice it now, and it might really piss you off, but just wait 10 years, wait 20 years. You're the anointed one," right? I'm not saying that I am. I'm just saying in
Yeah, yeah.
context, right? I always try and explain to guys, though, that I coach, "Hey, if you've never been angry at God, you don't know God. You're not communicating enough with him." Because there are times when I have heard God say to me something specifically about how to treat my wife, and I do it, and I don't get the result that I wanted, and I'm like, "Fuck you. How you told me." And and weeks later, I see a result and I go, "Oh shit.
Yeah,
Thank
'cause
you."
you're putting it into practice.
Yep. I'm like, "Thank you for not crushing me." And thank you. So the whole point of this is you don't get angry at somebody that you don't know. You know, if you, Jesse, went online and you said something about me and it hurt me, I'd be pissed at you
Mhm.
because I'd be like, "I know you. We talk. Why wouldn't you just talk to me?" Right. If somebody, some asshat on the internet says that I'm a douche, like, cool, bro. Like, I don't know you. We don't talk. Like, you don't have any idea who I am.
Yeah.
So for me to get angry at God, it's a point in time, but the the whole idea is that I can only do that because I have a relationship with him. And
Mhm.
I'm like, "Hey man, you're pushing me in a direction and it's really hurting me. And yeah, you told me that you would cover me and you uphold the hand of the righteous." And oftentimes when I say that in my quiet time, I go, "God," I look around the world and I'm like, "What's going on here? You said that you uphold the hand of the righteous." Do you know what I hear most often the Spirit say to me? "Well, then live righteously." If that's what he said, if God
Well,
said he upholds the hand of the righteous, well, then I think your only job is to live righteously, bro. And I'm
yep.
like, shit. Okay. Which is true. And that is, guys, if my whole focus in life is to know that God is who he says he is and believe that God will uphold the hand of the righteous, well, then my only job in life is to live righteously. Tie it back very to the beginning of the call. Well, what does living righteously look like? Well, if I'm a man and I have a wife and kids, then I need to be a servant.
Yeah.
That's to me what being a man looks like. I want to model my manhood off of David. I want to model my manhood off of Jesus. There are some other great examples. I mean, hell, one of my favorite guys in the scripture is the Apostle Paul. Like, do I want to model my life after Paul? Like, no, I'm not going to go cutting people's heads off that don't believe what I believe. But man, you get past that when the scales fall off, and Paul is a gangster.
Paul really is, and he's another example that I always go to because men get caught up in beating themselves up and putting themselves down, which that doesn't really everybody's personality is different, right? There's a lot of different personality traits about you and I. This self negativity doesn't comprehend with me in my mind. So I can't just tell a guy, bro, just stop doing that, right? Because it doesn't, what does that really do to a guy who does it a lot? But now I can go to Paul with other men. And Paul was considered wealthy. I don't know. A lot of people don't realize Paul was from the families of the Hebrews, right? He, even when they references, what he references is what his dad did for work. He came from money. He was born
Mhm.
a citizen. Okay. He was born a citizen of Rome, wealth. Okay. Let's put that into context. Then he had daddy money. He was going around with men killing people. He was going around with men door knocking. You believe in this Christian Christ, Jesus dude, Yeshua? Come with us. And they were rounding up people. All that being said, he's in prison and he never beats himself up. You know what he says? He goes, "If they kill me tomorrow, I'm so excited because I get to be with Jesus. I get to be with the Father. If he has more work for me to do because I'm not to be killed tomorrow, then I'm just as grateful because I'll continue to go and spread the word." And it's like,
So wait, he wasn't he you mean to tell me that Paul wasn't like, "Man, I'm such a piece of shit. I can't believe I did that. I was killing people. I'm so unworthy." Like, when I hear that, all I think of is selfishness.
yeah, it is.
When
It's
I
like,
hear
oh,
s
I think it's your ego that
when I
you,
hear somebody say that, all I hear is me, 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 me.
yeah.
I'm this, I'm not worthy, I'm the what I hear a guy searching for is someone to tell him that he's wrong. You're that's not who you are. You're an amazing dude. Like you're the selfish, selfish, selfish. How about this? Try this on for size, bro. Know who you are so much and what God says about you that you never utter that nonsense out of your mouth again.
Mhm.
Maybe we just try that for a little while. God says you are this. You're a child of the king. Okay? What's that mean? Well, that means you can't go around saying me, 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 I'm this, I'm that. You
Yeah.
know? So I hear selfishness, and I don't think anybody would say a trait of a good what's a man? Well, the way that I would describe a really strong man is selfish. That's not congruent.
Mhm.
That doesn't jive.
No. No,
So,
no selfish man ever left a legacy.
no, no, no. Which goes back to then how do we reconcile? Do we believe that a, s- a strong trait in a man, or what is a man? Are we left with servant asterisk with aura would be the way that we would define a biblical man?
I think
Or
it was I think I would put it the other way. I would say he has biblical aura, which leads him to servanthood.
I think that is a perfect way to describe what you and I, men of faith, deep rooted faith, would say a man is. And aura, you can't fake.
Mhm.
You like Jesse, you can't tell me what your aura is. You just have to be who you are. And then I tell you what your aura is. That's how you know you have aura.
Yes.
If you walk into a room and then you want to tell everybody who you are a faker.
Mhm.
If you're going to walk into a room and you're just going to start shaking hands and making friends and being who you are, then when you leave the room, guys have an opportunity. That who was that? That's something about that dude right there. That's aura. You can't fake that.
Yep. It goes to the thing that I say masculinity is defined by men amongst men, right? When you have that aura, men are gonna want you in their tribe.
Hmm.
The guy who fakes it, no one's gonna want you in their tribe, right? Your friends are probably surface level friends, and you
Fact.
probably have 50 of them, which means you don't have any friends actually at all. And
That's a
that's
good
where
topic, and we'll have to
yeah,
cover that. Maybe we'll have to go granular in that because if you're friends with everybody, you're friends with nobody, and there's so many spin-offs on that. That just means you don't have any hard conversations, and that would be a characteristic of a man that of a man with aura that leads as a servant has hard conversations.
mhm,
You can't have aura if you can't look at a guy and be like, "Hey, man, I love you, but you are wrong."
mhm,
And oh, by the way, like I'm not saying you're wrong, but like here, here's what it says, so I think you're wrong.
yeah.
Like,
There's so and I'm gonna tell everyone how manly I am. If I were to fuck up in my relationship to whatever degree, right? Degrees are subjective. My wife knows that she can call 2 men and they will be on my ass with biblical sound doctrine to tell me I'm fucking up
fact,
and on that ass.
fact. Joby Martin did a really good podcast on this, and I am very slow to point men in the direction of preachers.
Mhm,
We can have another conversation about this at another date. But there are a few men whose audio and video match. And Joby had a great thing about this. If you do not have two, three, four, however many it is that you feel you need, if you don't have a group of men that will confront you when you are biblically wrong, I'm not talking about, there's context here. Like if you're wrong about a certain thing and it's not a biblical principle, fine. Then I think you got to give men the ability to figure it out. But if there's something going on in your life and you are biblically out of line and you don't have men that'll come knock on your door and be like, "Hey bro, we need to talk." Then you're wrong. You're wrong. And you're no better than somebody that we would all point and say that this guy's wrong. A billionaire who only hires men that say yes. We would all say that that guy is wrong, he's insecure, whatever. Yet we all, on a much smaller scale, none of us are billionaires, but we surround ourselves with guys that justify our behavior. It's okay to do this on the guys trip. It's okay to even have a guys trip. That's another topic. Like, what the fuck are we doing in 2026? We're still doing guys trips. Like,
yeah,
eh, right? So you got to have guys in your life that are like, hey man, now that you're not leading and you're not leading biblically, which is what you say that you want to do.
and we should talk about the guy strips because I know you and I on the phone we've ranted about that for a solid 20 minutes before.
We have.
Yeah.
We have. And I think like in the big picture, right? Guys that like want to go hunt together or something like that. Okay, I think there's context. I'm not gonna like I'm not fully dying on that hill, but what I'm so out on in 2026 at this stage of my life, because of the leader that I've developed into, because God has been kind and patient with me, I don't have the bandwidth to go watch like a basketball tournament in Las Vegas with my buddies.
Yeah.
Like what are we talking, Jesse, what are we talking about? We could potentially be an end time prophecy right now. And you're telling me you want to board a Southwest flight to Las Vegas to like bet on basketball and drink beer? I couldn't be any further out on that.
Same.
That's not the God didn't ask me to do that.
One of my favorite lines from Crazy Love by Francis Chan is it's a story that he says, he's at, like, some sort of Broadway show with his mother-in-law, and he leans over halfway through the show and goes, "How do you like it?" And she goes, "Don't wanna be here if Jesus comes back." And he was like
Oh,
he was like, "Oh, and he was, like, not into it. It was more of like a and I'm someone's probably gonna rip my ass because it's slightly out of context, but the way I remember it is, like, they were trying to do something nice and fancy for the mother-in-law. "Look, we've kind of made it a little bit Broadway show." First time he'd ever even been to one.
mhm.
Not where I'd wanna be if Jesus comes back. And it was just a gut punch, and I think about that often. Is this what I really wanna be doing if Jesus comes back? Okay,
That's gonna haunt me.
not going
That is gonna haunt me, Jesse, because you could take that is something I think that a real man should consider at all times. You should have the thought in the back of your mind, if what I'm about to do, if Jesus showed up while I'm doing it, how good of a look would that be?
Mhm.
If I'm manhandling myself in a bathroom, watching underage girls have sex with 40-year-old dudes, and Jesus showed up and was like, "All right, well, I'm coming now." So, are you happy with that? Are you happy? That's one end of the spectrum. Are you happy leaving your wife and kids to go watch the Waste Management Pro golf and drink and, like,
Yeah,
you know, I thought I bet you, and I don't know this, we haven't talked about this, but I bet you the one thing that you're hoping to hear when Christ shows up or you meet him is, "Well done, my good and faithful servant."
yes, for sure, 100%, versus,
How am
"Never knew your name."
how am I gonna expect if Jesus were to return as I'm deep sea fishing with a prostitute on the boat with my buddies because that's cool, that's fun. How am I gonna expect Jesus to go, "Man, well done, well done, my good and faithful servant."
Yeah,
You know? Now, I want guys to not hear what we're not I don't want anybody to hear what we're not saying. I am very much in the mindset where Jesus said, "Be in the world, not of it."
mhm,
I'm not telling you that I'm too much of a prude that I can't enjoy a basketball game or a football game or whatever. But my mindset is that if I'm gonna do that stuff, it's gonna be because my family's around me with me.
yep,
I'm not going anywhere without my family. I watched the NCAA tournament this weekend at my mother-in-law's house, swimming in the pool with my kids. That's how I took that in.
mhm, yep,
Like, so there's layers to that, but I think we covered a lot of ground. I know that you gotta pop smoke. I think we covered a lot of ground on what's the, like, fundamental basis of what a man is. And remember, guys, like, when we talk about this stuff, we're faith is at the core of who we are, Jesse and I. So you're not gonna hear us talk about, like, well, I don't know, what does MTV say a man is? Like, no, I'm not fucking interested, right? I'm interested in, what does the Bible call me to do as a man? I think with the right attitude, the right aura, servanthood.
yeah,
So
and
and we can chop that up more, but I think we've come to, like, at least some understanding for men to digest. Well, am I that? And if you're not, then I think you want to continue following on the path that you're on with Jesse and I, taking these calls in, understanding this stuff, because we're going to help unpack how you can be that guy.
yeah, and the thing I want to add is when you think of the definition of a man, and if it's that biblical aura that leads to servanthood, it should transcend time.
Mm,
Men need to cultivate the mindset that it should transcend time, no matter what time you've been in. 10,000 years ago, Jesus, Oregon Trail, like, is your mindset still that same today, zombie apocalypse tomorrow? Like, it should be the same.
mm, mm. I love that. I love that because we don't know how much time that we're going to be here for. And if legacy building is what you're after, which is what it should be, because creating disciples is building a legacy. That's what Jesus calls us to do.
Starts in the home.
Then I had better get my son to be walking the walk and talking the talk long before he's ready. David was 13. My 13-year-old son better have his fucking head on straight because mine was on straight.
Yes.
Not because he should, just because. It's because I have given him a good enough example whereby when my son's 24, because I've been in this position, sitting around a fire with his buddies, and they're all saying how shitty their dads were, my son can go, I don't have any frame of reference what you guys are talking about because
Right.
I'm going to do it just like him. And matter of fact, if you don't have anybody in your life, here's my dad's cell phone number. You should call him and get time with my dad.
No,
That's the legacy.
what would be happening is the only reason your son continues that relationship with them is because they're calling you Uncle Adam through getting to 24 because they
Fair
did not
enough.
have that dad,
Fair
right? You
enough.
guys
That's
shouldn't be hanging around derelicts at 24 if they haven't been in his life for multiple years and calling you Uncle Adam.
Yep, that's true. That's true. There's context behind that.
Yeah.
I remembered I knew who Jesus was, but I strayed. And like I'm a fool to think that my son may not have some of those same experiences. I would hope not. But hey, he's going to have his own free will. And there may be a time when he's sitting around and those conversations are being had and he'll never be, unless he wants to lie, he'll never be able to say that his dad was anything but
Mhm.
exactly who you should want to be. And whatever, I don't know. God will sort that out. That's something that I continually talk to him about and pray. It's one of my biggest and deepest and longest prayers is that God will chase after my son's heart, that he'll constantly stay hot on his tail. And 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 furthermore, Jesse, if you and I are doing what we're doing right now and we're being who we say we are, then I think the likelihood of our sons following in our footsteps is greater.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it's going to happen for sure. It just means that we're providing a better outcome potentially. The numbers are in our favor.